in the country. It's again in Brussels, in Belgium. The head of the Commission is Ursula von der Leyen. Maybe you've heard of her. She was former minister, a minister in Germany in the government in Germany, and she's now the head of the Commission. And every member state is entitled to send one commissioner to the European Commission. That's why it consists of 27 commissioners. The term of office is 5 years, just that you know. Important is that the European Commission has two different tasks. Yeah? Two different tasks. The European Commission is on the one hand, the motor of integration. What does that means? That the European Commission is the only institution that has the right to make a proposal for a new law. So whenever there is a new law in the European Union, it's only the European Commission which can make a proposal for such legislation. Okay? Only the Commission is entitled, has the right to make a proposal for a new legislation, for a new law. They have the right of initiative. So they start the lawmaking process. And the other task of the European Commission is that they are the guardian of treaties, meaning that the European Commission controls whether the European law is correctly implemented. I told you that the directive needs to be transposed into national law within 2 or 3 years, right? So the Commission, after 2 or 3 years, checks with the member states whether they have transposed that directive into national law. Okay, or they check whether the member states violate any other European laws. So they make sure that all the member states follow European law. And if the European Commission has if the European Commission thinks that one member state does not follow European law, then the European Commission brings that to the attention of the European Court of Justice. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. I told you that the head is Ursula von der Leyen, but there was a very famous European or the head of the European Commission prior to von der Leyen was Jean-Claude Juncker, and he was a very funny politician, and I would like to show you a video of his best moments. Just 2 minutes. He was really a little bit weird. So that's, just imagine, that was one of the highest representatives of the European Union. Yeah, I will show you that video.
Bunter, kuscheliger, länger. Weiter geht's mit Österreichs allergrößtem Räumungsverkauf beim XXX Lutz mit bis zu minus 77% Rabatt in allen Abteilungen. Unser XXX Lutz.
Was der alles hat.
So that's the former head of the European Commission of the European Union, so one of the highest politicians in entire European Union. And now look how
Prime Minister Fico, you have the floor.
No.
Juncker, hello, how are you? Sky News.
In-house on Sky News.
Excellent.
Because Sky News is better than the BBC, because the BBC is not reporting these
Well, we
events.
won't get into that debate, sir. But can I just ask?
No, but that's of no concern to me. Huh? It was just a compliment for Sky News.
So,
A lot of things have been written and said about you. We're told that you like a drink and you're a smoker, and I even read that you drink endless cups of black coffee. We couldn't care less. We're not interested. We've even seen...
Do you have a cigarette, please?
Well, actually, it's funny you should say that.
Okay, yeah, okay.
President, what will you say to Theresa May tonight?
Are you Theresa May? No.
President, your patience, right?
The light of remembrance! The light of life!
Je me suis rasé pour la première fois de ma vie à l'âge de 15 ans. Très pubertaire. J'ai saigné. Je me suis dit ce matin, je vais réessayer. Vous voyez.
Okay, so you see, he was a very strange guy, and he was actually also said to be alcoholics, you know, and that's why he couldn't walk at a certain point in time, and the others had to kind of, you know, help him walk down, walking down the stage. So we talked about the European Council. We talked about the European Commission. Now it's time to talk about the European Parliament. European Parliament is situated in Brussels and in Strasbourg in France. It has around, oh, not around, actually precisely 705 members plus one president. And it's again, like the European Commission, it's the term of office is 5 years. Yeah, and now the European Parliament has legislative power together with the Council, so they can make a law. And now remember, there is, or be aware that there is a difference between the European Council and the Council. Okay, and that's a little bit irritating or a little bit disturbing, but there's a difference. So keep that in mind. The European Council is the institution where the head of the states are present. So the presidents of the state or the chancellor of the government, and they make the big political decisions. the European Commission is the one that has the right to make a proposal for a law, and the two institutions that have really legislative power, so that can then decide on the laws, are the European Parliament and the Council. Okay. So I told you about the European Parliament, and the Council also is situated in Brussels and consists of one minister from each member state, and it changes according to the agenda. So depending on which topic is discussed, there is always another composition of the council. Yeah? So if the topic is agricultural affairs, then all the ministers of the European Union, of the member states, for agricultural affairs meet. If the topic is, I don't know, if the topic is financial affairs, then all the ministers for finance meet. If the topic is about foreign affairs, then all the ministers in the member states about for foreign affairs meet. So the composition varies. Yeah, it's it always depends on the topic of what always depends on the agenda. Okay, and and they also have legislative power together with the European Parliament. Yeah? So that means, to sum up, yeah, the way a European law is made, the only institution who is entitled, who has the right to start the lawmaking process, is the only institution that is allowed to start the lawmaking process is the EU Commission. Okay, the EU Commission makes a proposal for a new law that is sent to the European Parliament. Then the European Parliament discusses the proposal and makes amendments. At the same time, the proposal of the European Commission is sent to the Council, and the Council discusses the proposal and makes amendments. So after that, we have the proposal of the European Commission, and we have an amended version with changes of the European Parliament, and another version of the law with amendments from the Council. And then all three come together. So the Council, the Parliament, and the Commission come together and then decide on the final version of the law. And then it just needs to be published in the European journal. Then we have a law. Okay. I know, as I said at the beginning, a little bit difficult. I completely understand that. I told you we skipped the High Representative, and now let's talk about the last institution, the Court of Justice. Okay, the Court of Justice is situated in Luxembourg, and the judges are appointed for 6 years. Yeah, so quite a long time. And the European Court of Justice, the Court of Justice of the European Union, has two important tasks. Okay, and you should remember that for the exam. Yeah? So the two tasks of the European Court of Justice are: first, actions for infringements. Infringements means violations. Okay, so actions for violations of European law. Yeah, actions for violations of European law. So I told you, the Commission controls whether member states have fulfilled their obligations, whether they respect European law. And if the European Commission thinks that a member state violates European law, it brings that to the attention of Is there someone waiting? No. And the European Commission brings that to the attention of the Court of Justice. Yeah? And so if a member state violates European law, then the European Court of Justice has to make a decision. And either the European Court of Justice says, well, the member state that does not violate European law, then everything is fine, right? Or the European Court of Justice holds that the member state violates European law, and in such a case, it tells the member state, he makes a decision, the European Court of Justice, yeah, and it tells the member state to stop violating European law, and normally it would put also financial sanctions on the member state. So the member state has to pay a fee as a punishment for having violated European law. So that's the first task of the European Court of Justice. And the second task of the European Court of Justice is to make so-called preliminary ruling. What is that? The Court of Justice, the European Court of Justice, is the only institution that is allowed to decide on the interpretation of EU law. So whenever, I told you, we have 24 different languages. So there is always, even though the translators do a good job, despite that, there are always doubts about what a certain meaning of EU law is. And the only court in the entire European Union that is entitled to decide about the interpretation of EU law is the Court of Justice. Yeah? So if let's say if an Austrian court, if an Austrian court has to apply European law, and the Austrian court is not sure what a certain term means in European law, then the Austrian court asks the European Court of Justice to tell what that means. Yeah? And the European Court of Justice is the only institution that is allowed to really decide on the meaning of European law. And the decision of the European Court of Justice, what a certain term in European law means, that decision is called preliminary ruling. So the European Court of Justice issues a preliminary ruling telling what a certain European law means. Okay? And those are the institutions. So is it at the beginning a little bit is it a little bit difficult, or what do you think? All the institutions, what do you all, question to all of you. Is it, but I can tell you from experience with the other courses, when you go through that on your own and you read through the slides, it becomes much easier to remember, because I think at first maybe a little bit hard to to distinguish the different institutions, but you really do fine. So then I just have 2 slides left before the break. Here, the general principle. So we already talked about 2 principles. That was the principle of conferral and the concept of supranationality. And I want to talk to you about, you see, there are 3 principles here that I want to talk about. The principle of direct effect, and that's very straightforward, because I told you that supranational law directly puts obligations on the individuals or gives them rights, so it's directly applicable. and that means the directly applicable means the European law has direct effect. Direct effect. So the supranational law, by the way, it means the same. Supranational and supranational always means the same. Yeah. So the supranational law directly applicable on the individuals. Yeah. That's meant by direct effect. And so the regulations, we talked about the EU regulations, and also the founding treaties, they have direct effect. So they directly impose obligations on individuals or directly confers rights on individuals. That's why it's a super or the supranational law. Both means the same. So that's the concept of direct effect. And lastly, the concept of supremacy. Yeah. Of course, since we have two different layers of law, we have the European law and the national law. So it could happen that the European law says, I don't know, you have to have, let's say, what could we say? Let's say there is a law on the minimum wage. Yeah. And let's say there is a European law on the minimum wage saying 10 euros per hour is the minimum. And then you have a national law saying 5 euros per hour is the minimum. So we have a European law and a national law that both tell different things, right? So on the one hand, the European law says 10 euros and the national law says 5 euros, and now there's a conflict. And the question is, which one of the two laws is the one that wins? Which one is the one that rules? And here the rule is, the principle is that the European law, so the supranational law, the European law always prevails over any national law. Okay, and the national law is not to be applied. Yeah, it's just not to be applied, and it's the European law that prevails over national law. Okay, so remember, whenever there's a conflict between European law and national law, it's always the European law that is applied. It's the European law that wins, it prevails over national law, and the national law just must not be applied, is not to be applied. Okay, and the state liability, we skip that principle. That's not so important for our purposes. Okay, so I would like to make a break right now, because I know that's not so easy, the stuff that we went through. So I would like to make a break. Let's meet again at what is it then? Your time? It's 3. Let's meet at 3:45. Okay, back here. Okay, 3:45 p.m. your time. Okay. And if there are any questions in the meantime, we can discuss that at the beginning of, or we can discuss that after the break. I'm happy to answer all the questions. Okay. Okay. Super. Then see you. Have a great break.
Ủa Khánh làm gì cười tươi đấy Khánh ơi?
Hello. So welcome back from the break. See, I'm again in another room. I keep up with the tradition. I hope you can hear me, and I wanted to ask if you have any questions or comments. Everything clear?
About the recording of our lesson, are you gonna like post it on Teams for us to review it?
I will. I handle that issue in a way that I do not record the sessions, but my way to be fair and as nice as possible, I will only ask questions at the exam that we will really go through in detail in class. And if you pay close attention during the class, the questions for the exam will be no surprise at all. And whenever you have any additional questions, just tell me. Or whenever you think you would like to have, or you would like me to explain anything again, just tell me. I'm happy to explain everything again and again as often as you want. Just tell me, or just, you know, or write me an email or whatever. Yeah. By the way, do all of you have my email address?
I guess not.
And I write you my email address in the chat. Okay, so that such that all of you.
Yes, thank you, teacher.
Okay. So that's my email address. Okay. Okay.
Cái từ container blue moon chính là rất là hiếm cực luôn.
Okay, I continue then with our session on European law. Now we talk about the internal market. Okay, the internal market. That's one of the key elements of the European Union. Okay, one of the key elements or key features, if you want. Yeah? So what is it all about? The internal market. Yeah? So the big idea is, from a business or economic point of view, that Europe and all the national markets of the members of the European Union, yeah? We have 27 member states. All the 27 markets should be perceived as one big internal market. Okay, that means it should be allowed to freely move goods, persons, services, and capital across the border in the entire European Union. If I say free, that does not mean that I do not have to pay for transportation. If I deliver a good from Austria to Germany, it means free means there I do not have to pay any tariffs or taxes or any fees at the border to cross the border. So I can freely, without having to pay any extra fees, I can cross all the borders within the European Union. Obviously, for the transport, I have to pay, clear. Also have to pay for the transport if I deliver a good within Austria. But I do not have to pay any taxes. So it's perceived, it's considered one big European market. And so that's the one element, that you are free to move the goods, persons, services, and capital. And the second element is that it's any kind of discrimination based on nationality is prohibited. It's not allowed. It's not allowed if, you know, the member states in the European Union make laws that they discriminate against other members or other people of the other member states. It's not allowed anymore, but just within the European Union. Okay, those are the two elements, and they make those two elements assure that you have one big entire European market where you can move around without any hurdle, without any boundaries. And just imagine that. Okay, so I would like to start by talking about the discrimination. Okay, the non-discrimination principle. That means non-discrimination principle is at the same time, you can also say it's a principle of equal treatment. So all people, all nationals of member states in the European Union have to be treated the same, have to be treated equally. Yeah, and no discrimination is allowed, nor a direct discrimination, nor an indirect discrimination. Okay, I give you an example of a direct discrimination. Yeah? Since we are at a university in Austria, it's basically you are entitled to study at the university if you have finished high school. So if you have a high school diploma, then you're allowed to study in Austria. Yeah? So if there was a law saying you're only allowed to study in Austria if you are an Austrian national, if you have Austrian citizenship, that would be not allowed in Europe, because you discriminate against other people from the European Union based on nationality. So that would mean that a student from Germany, a student from Finland, a student from Sweden, from Portugal, wherever in the European Union would not be allowed to study in Vienna, right? That's not allowed. That would hurt the principle of equal treatment. Okay. That's a direct discrimination. Direct discrimination would be if there is a law saying in order to study at the university in Austria, you have to be Austrian national. That would be a direct discrimination against the people in the other member states of the European Union. That's not allowed. But it's also not allowed to indirectly discriminate against the other nationals of the member states of the European Union. Yeah? And an indirect discrimination would be, on its face. So if you first look at a rule, it seems objective, it seems not discriminating, but if you think about it, in reality, the rule would only target a certain group of people. So in the end, it's still a discrimination. And I'll give you an example for that. If Austria would make a law saying you are only allowed to study at the university in Austria if you hold a diploma from an Austrian high school, that would mean, you could argue, well, also, people from Germany could go to school in Austria, or also, if a family from Italy comes to Austria and they live here, they send their student or their kids to the school here, so they also would be entitled, or it would be possible that they have a high school diploma of an Austrian school here, if they go in Austria to school. But in reality, of course, you make it much more difficult, because the chances, or the group of Europeans that hold high school diplomas from Austrian high schools is, of course, very, 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 very minor. So the only purpose of such a law would be to prevent students from other member states to study in Austria, and that would be an indirect discrimination. And also an indirect discrimination is not allowed. It's prohibited. So every discrimination based on nationality is forbidden, is prohibited. Okay. Do you have any questions to that?
No. It's okay.
Super. Okay. How is that in Vietnam? Yeah, tell me. You have a question or no question? No question, probably.
Oh, the discrimination. Okay. Why is there direct or indirect discrimination?
You know, direct discrimination would be if there is a law, saying only students in Austria are only, if there was a law saying only students with an Austrian passport, so only Austrian nationals are allowed to study in Austria. That would be a direct discrimination. Why direct? Because you, as a requirement, you ask for the Austrian nationality, right? Right? So it's direct. So you ask, a requirement in the law is you need to have an Austrian passport, so you need to be Austrian national to study law or to study at the university in Austria. That would be a direct discrimination because the nationality is a direct requirement of the law. But you do not want an indirect discrimination neither. So that means if you do not ask for a nationality, but if you ask for a high school diploma from an Austrian school, you do not require an Austrian passport, right? So you do not directly discriminate against someone based on nationality, because you do not ask for the nationality as a requirement in the law. But in reality, if you think about it, of course, it's normally only the Austrians, so the kids with Austrian passport who go in Austria to school and who finish an Austrian high school. So basically, again, you discriminate against all the others because, of course, they do not have a high school diploma from an Austrian high school, right? Right?
Yeah.
So in reality, you still discriminate against the other nationals of the member states in the European Union without saying, clearly that you ask for nationality, but still you discriminate, and that should not be allowed neither. Yeah, that should not be allowed as well. Okay, so both of them are not allowed. The direct discrimination and indirect discrimination is not allowed, and that's important because if only direct discrimination would be allowed, you could find ways to discriminate against other member states or people of other member states just by, changing the wording of the law a little bit, and then all of a sudden you do not have a direct discrimination anymore, but still you discriminate against the others. That's why it's so important that only that indirect discrimination is not allowed. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, super. 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 What are the requirements in Vietnam to study at the university? What were the requirements for you to study at your university?
Have high school diploma and have a particular grade to gain admission to university.
Okay. And do you also have to pass an exam to enter university? So apart from the high school, is there an entrance test or entrance exam at the university itself again, or is it just a high school diploma?
We have one like national exam.
Okay. And that's not the high school diploma. That's additional, right? So that's another requirement, right?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Okay. So so the grades are important. So the better the grades, the more likely you get a spot at university. Is that right?
Yes, almost like this.
Okay, because for example in Austria, normally, I mean, it depends on the study that you want to do. There are some university programs that have a fixed number of applicants or of admitted students. So for example, if you want to study medicine in Austria, yeah, they have a closed number of students that they admit. And there is a very tough test at the university itself to enter the medicine school. But if you want to study, for example, law, for law, there is no such limited number. So basically everyone with a high school diploma could study law in Austria. And for example, in Germany, it's a little bit like obviously in Vietnam, because there the grades are the most important criteria. So the better that your grades are in Germany, the more likely you get admitted at university. So there the grades are very important. The grades at the high school diploma. Okay, so that's discrimination and indirect discrimination. You know what the typical discrimination in all day life is? I don't know whether you have whether that's the case in Vietnam. Maybe you know, but in Austria, a long time it's been the case that if you go to the hairdresser, yeah, you know, to the hairdresser, if you want to have your hair cut, yeah, and if you go to the hairdresser, then let's say the same cut, yeah. So that same cut, it takes the same amount of time if you want to have your hair shortened or whatever. If you have the same haircut, it's more expensive for women than for men. So the hairdresser would ask more money from women than from men, even though it's the same haircut. And that's also kind of discrimination, but this time not based on nationality, but based on gender. Is that also the case in Vietnam? Do you pay, question to the women, do you pay more at the hairdresser than the man?
We often pay more for the hair, not because of discrimination of gender, but because the hair of women is longer and then more complicated. Okay.
If that's the case, then of course there's a reason for that. So that's, as you say perfectly, that's no discrimination. But for example, in Austria, if you have, even for the same haircut, sometimes, even, you know, if you have, let's say, I don't know, let's assume it's really the same haircut, they would ask different prices. Or there were times when if you have insurance for your car or for your motorcycle, the insurance companies would ask more from women than from men, as you know, what they have to pay for insurance. So there were some cases, maybe not so much in Austria, but in other countries. Yeah. So always have in mind that this discrimination issue. That's very interesting to think about. Yeah. Okay, but you know, in Austria, it's generally not allowed to discriminate against other people. We're now not talking about European law, that's an Austrian law. Yeah? It's not allowed to discriminate against other people on certain reasons. And what do you think are those reasons that you're not allowed to discriminate? For example, if you want to rent out your apartment to someone else, you are not allowed to or if you apply for a job, or then you are not allowed to discriminate against applicants for the job based on certain reasons. And what do you think those reasons are? Could you think of some reasons that you're not allowed to discriminate against someone? So one is obviously nationality. What are the other reasons? What do you think? Could you have an idea? Let's say I'm looking for, let's say, accountant for my company, okay, for a new accountant, or I look for a new marketing expert who helps me to, to do marketing for my new product, whatever, okay, and I look for an applicant. And what do you think? So I'm not allowed to write in that job description that I'm looking only for Austrians, because that would be discrimination based on nationality. I'm not allowed to write in the job description I'm only looking for someone who is Christian, or I'm only looking for someone who is Muslim, because that would be discrimination based on religion. I'm not allowed to write into the job description I'm only looking for women, or I only look for male candidates. So that would be discrimination on gender, not allowed in Austria. And there are some other reasons. What do you think are some other reasons that you're not allowed to discriminate against someone? Should you think of some other reasons?
Age?
Yes, very good. Super. Age, yes. Yes. So I'm not allowed to say I'm looking for an accountant younger than 50 years. Yeah, that would be not allowed. Super. So we have nationality, we have age, we have religion, we have gender, and there's one missing, or actually two. Two reasons are missing. What could you think of? Any idea? So I'm not allowed to discriminate against someone based on whether that person is handicapped or not. Okay, so that's not allowed. I cannot say I only want people who are not handicapped. Yeah? And so, for example, someone in a wheelchair or what, yeah. So if there's an accountant perfectly educated as an accountant, and I say I only want people not in wheelchairs, that would be not allowed. And the last reason that you're not allowed to discriminate against someone is sexual orientation. Yeah? So that's also one reason. Okay, so that's so much for the discrimination. And now let's talk about the 4 freedoms. I told you the one aspect of the internal market is the 4 freedom. The one aspect is the non-discrimination principle. Yeah. So if the question at the exam is explain the internal market, then explain the internal market, then you would write the current internal market consists of 2 elements. The one is the non-discrimination principle. That's true for, so it's prohibited to directly or indirectly discriminate against someone. And the second element are the 4 freedoms, okay? And the 4 freedoms, they are the free movement of goods. So I can freely move goods around the European Union without having to pay any extra fees or tariffs. So just, think of it, if I have a company and I deliver goods, maybe a machine or product, whatever, certain products to Vietnam, I would have to pay at the border to Vietnam, or if I fly that goods to Hanoi airport, and then I would have to pay a tariff, a certain taxes, right, certain fees at the airport, because I export goods to Vietnam. Yeah. But within the European Union, there are no such fees at all. So you can freely deliver goods around or move goods around in the European Union. It's considered one big market. And again, freely means not that you do not have to pay for transport. Of course you have to pay for transport, but there are no tariffs at the border. And that's a great thing, of course, right? Just imagine that. Just imagine if we come back to the map. So someone who would, a company in Portugal can deliver goods freely from Portugal through Spain, France, Germany, Poland, and can deliver it to Finland. You know how many borders there are crossed, and you do not pay any taxes or tariffs at any of these borders. It's like one big market. Okay, so very, really very, from a business point of view, very great thing. Yeah. And then the second of the 4 freedoms is the free movement of persons. That means if you want to apply for a job, you can apply for a job in the entire European Union. You do not need any certificate to stay in that country, any work license, work permit, whatever. You do not need any extra permit to apply for a job. Yeah? So if I, for example, I'm a lawyer, if I would like to work for an Italian company as a lawyer, or for an Italian company in the legal department of that company, I could apply there. If I'm an accountant, I could apply for a French company to work as an accountant in that company. If I'm a tax expert, I could apply for a company in Sweden to work in a company there as a tax expert. I could apply for jobs in the entire European Union without any additional requirements. So I do not need a work permit. If I would like to work in Vietnam for a company, I would need a work permit. If you, as a Vietnamese national, would like to work for an Austrian company in Austria, you would need to have a visum, a work visum, right? You would need to have a certain permit to work here. That's not necessary if you're a member, if you're a national of a member of the European Union. So you can freely apply for jobs in the entire entire European Union. And second element of the free movement of persons, you can also freely decide to establish a company in any other country of the European Union. So if I want, let's assume I have a great business idea, I could found a company in any member state of the European Union without any additional requirements. I could not simply open up a company, as an Austrian national in Vietnam. I would need a special permit to do that. The same for you as a Vietnamese here in Austria. But within the European Union, I could go to Portugal, I could go to Italy, I could go to Bulgaria, to Greece. I could found companies there. I could open up my own company there. Yeah. So that's, I'm just considered as any national of those countries. So if I go to Greece, and I would like to start a company there, then I'm considered, or I'm treated the same way as a national of Greece. Yeah. And the four freedoms is the free movement of services. So if let's say I'm a carpenter, okay, or I offer other services, yeah, then I'm free. I can freely offer those services in the entire European Union. I just crossed the border. For example, Austria, the living costs are much higher than in our neighboring countries of the European Union, like Hungary, for example, or Slovakia, or other countries in the European Union. So what Austrians sometimes do is they hire, if they need, if they have their apartment renovated, then they hire a carpenter from Hungary, or a carpenter from, I don't know, from Slovenia, from other countries of the European Union, and they come with a car, cross the border, and they just offer the services here without any additional requirements. Okay. And lastly, the free movement of capital. So you can make bank transfers in the entire European Union without any additional fee that you have to pay for crossing the border. Yeah? So you can make bank transfers around the country, around the European Union. Even if you make a bank transfer to another country in the European Union, you do not pay extra taxes for that or extra fees for that. Okay. And just from a practical point of view, it's really great. And if you ever happen to come to Austria, you should really take advantage of that. Once you are legally in Austria, then you can really freely cross borders in the European Union. Yeah. So, for example, if I go on holidays, so the number one country for holidays in Austria is Italy, because that's the closest country with access to the sea. So if we go to Italy, it takes 5 hours by car, and we just, you go on the road, on the highway, and at a certain point you see a sign, now you're in Italy. You do not have to stop at the border. You do not have to show your passport. You just cross the border. You just go on, just go straight on the motor highway. And at a certain point in time, there's a sign telling you right now you're in Italy. And the only reason that you know that you're now in Italy is because the sign of the traffic signs, or the signs next to the highway are all of a sudden they are green, and in Austria most of the signs next to the street are blue. But that's the only reason. That's basically the only thing, or the only thing that makes you aware that you are now in Italy and not in Austria anymore. There is no border control, not whatsoever, and that's true for the entire European Union. So that's a great thing. Just think about it. Freely move around without showing your passport in 27 member states, in 27 states, and paying with the same currency in 19 states. So if we go to Italy, for example, we do not have to change money because they have the same currency. The same is true for Germany. Same is true for if you go to France, if you go to Spain, to Portugal, they all have their euro as a currency. So basically, if you go on vacation, you just cross the border with your car. You do not have to show your passport. You do not have to change money. You just go there. Huh? The only thing is they have a different language. Yes? So they speak Italian or French or Spanish or Portuguese, but the currency is the same. Yeah? So that's and not just for your private matters, of course, also especially for doing business, it's a very remarkable concept, the internal market. Okay, so tell me, questions?
Okay. So movement, free movement of services. You can have a company in Italy. You are in the European, right? So what is the difference between it and the free movement of capital?
Good question. To sum up again, okay, if you want to move a machine, for example, or a product across the border, it's the free movement of goods. If you want to move services, if you want to offer services across the border, yeah. So, for example, if I sell a machine or if I sell other products, then it's the movement of goods. But if I offer my services, for example, I'm a carpenter, or I offer legal advices, or I offer depending on what services you do, or you can, let's say your specialty is repairing old cars, yeah. So whatever your service is, if you want to offer your service is in another country, you're free to go across the border, to cross the border and offer your services there without any requirements. That's the free movement of services. Okay. In such a case, you do not sell a product; you sell your services. And then we have the free movement of persons. That means you as a person are free to cross the border without any requirements. That means you are free to apply for a job in another country. In this time, though, you are not offering services as someone who owns a company, but in this case, you are an employee, right? You work for a company. You can apply for a job in another company in Portugal or in Spain. Okay, that's the free movement of persons. Free movement of services means I have a company and I offer my services in another country of the European Union. And if I want to create a new company in another country, so if I want, let's say I offer services, yeah, but I think it would be a great thing to establish a new company in another country of the European Union, that would be the free movement of persons, because that also includes the free movement the possibility of establishment. Yeah? Okay. And then we have the free movement of capital. And capital just means that you are allowed to make a bank transfer across the country without any additional fees. Okay. So you can make, normally, if I, for example, make a bank transfer to Vietnam, I have to pay an additional fee for the bank transfer. Yeah? Or I've made a bank transfer to Serbia, which is in Europe but not part of the European Union. I have to pay extra fees for that. Yeah? But within the European Union, I can make bank transfers and move capital around without any requirements, any additional requirements. So I can move capital around in the European Union like any other national in the respective country, okay, of the European Union. I'm not treated differently. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Pretty
Super.
clear now.
So if the question at the exam is explain to me the internal market of the European Union, you tell me, well, the internal market consists of two elements. First, the non-discrimination principle. That means that people in the European Union are not allowed to discriminate against people of other member states of the European Union based on nationality. And it's not allowed to do that directly, and it's not allowed to discriminate against someone indirectly. So first element. And second element are the four freedoms. And then you tell me the free movement of goods, free movement of persons, free movement of capital, and free movement of services. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Super. Okay. then let's now finish our session for today. I told you, according to the principle of conferral, that means that the European Union has only those competences that were transferred to the European Union by the member states. So here you see some of the competences of the European Union, just to give you an idea. So, for example, there are common rules, there are competences in the field of competition, taxation, regional policies, social policy, consumer protection. We have a lot of consumer protection laws from the European Union. Health policy, cultural policy, tourism policy. So lots of areas in which the European Union can make laws, and there are also there are competences that are exclusive for the European Union, and there are competences that are not exclusive. So competences in which also the member states are allowed to make laws. And if there is a conflict of laws, remember, that's the concept of the principle of supremacy. That means if there is a conflict between a national law and a European law, in such a case, the European law is the one that prevails. So the European law is the one that wins, if you want to say so, and or so to say, and the national law must not be applied. It's only the European law that has to be applied. Okay, so here you see some of the just mentioned some of the union of the competences of the European Union: social policy, as I said, consumer, tourism. So a couple of actually some very important competences. Okay, so much for the European Union. I'm proud of you. You did a good job today. So we finished our session on the European Union. Have you any additional questions? Or do you have anything that you want to ask? Okay, if that's not the case.
I don't have right now. No.
Okay, so we have, again, you have some 30 minutes left of our session today. I would invite you to go through the materials, the presentation of the European Union on your own. Again, I'm sure